close.
Yes. Hi. You testified about various ministers and deputy ministers and officials asking you if the RCMP could take over from the Ottawa Police. Which cabinet minister asked you that?
The majority of my conversation is with the Minister of Public Safety, and it wasn't, it was early solutions, like everything on the table. Is there possibilities? And when we think of that, like I said in my testimony, it's not a possibility. We're not the police of jurisdiction. There's many capable police agencies, and Ottawa Police included, who, with their lead, we did the enforcement action, and together with the other police agencies, we put an end to the protest.
Was he the only minister? Did Minister Blair also ask?
It may have been a conversation because both those ministers were involved in this event because of the scope of the event. So it wasn't something I took note of anybody specific asking. It was just in a solution-oriented kind of conversation.
Commissioner, can you please clarify? You told the inquiry today that you advised Mr. Mendocino and Ms. Thomas that you believe that not all other existing tools had been exhausted. But in the email tabled with the inquiry today, the advice on the exhausted tools, that the tools were not exhausted, was actually removed from the talking points that you emailed to Ms. Thomas and Mr. Mendocino. So was there another email in which you advised them, or at what point and when did you present that advice to Mr. Mendocino?
Well, by giving it to his chief of staff, it's like giving it to the minister.
But you said you did both on the inquiry. Yes. At the inquiry, you said you did both, and the email that was presented today shows actually that advice was explicitly removed from that email. Yeah. So why was it removed from the email to Mr. Mendocino?
I am not sure, because the point being is that that was more of they only wanted a situational update from across the country, is how I believed it to be.
So who told you to remove the advice?
Nobody told me to remove it. It was just simply they wanted a situational update, and I wasn't there to provide it. That meeting had a whole other purpose.
But it was at that meeting that they discussed the invocation of the Emergencies Act. You are, yes, as you said, the window on policing for the federal government. You were of the view that there were other tools that could be used, and you both decided not to present that yourself to Cabinet.
No, that information was already presented.
But only to the Chief of Staff?
No, and to the Minister.
But it's not in the email to the Minister.
When I email the Chief of Staff, that is the Minister. When the Minister emails the Chief of Staff, when the Chief of Staff speaks to me, that's information from the Minister.
And you're also the top Mountie in Canada for Canadians. I'm wondering if you can explain why you told the Parliamentary Committee that the Act was needed in May, but you never said that you had reservations. You never said you believed that there were other tools that could be used, when in fact that was your perspective at the time.
No, it's about giving the decision makers all the information that they need so that they can in fact make an informed decision. So there was the Ontario Emergency Act.
But why didn't you tell Canadians that you had reservations, which you had?
Well, they weren't reservations in the sense that this wouldn't be useful for law enforcement. I just wanted to make sure that they had all the information available before them to make that decision. They obviously had a ton of different information. They put that all together, they make their decision. And there was no hidden agenda. They got the information they needed.
But Canadians didn't get that information. That's my point. You testified several times at House of Commons and joint House of Commons Senate committees on this decision. At no point did you express the reservations that you privately held. Why is that?
It wasn't necessarily a reservation, and
it was. You said there were other tools that have not yet been exhausted.
In fact, within RCMP jurisdiction, we didn't use the Emergency Act because we used existing tools, and that was my context as the Commissioner of the RCMP. Oui, je vais essayer.
Donc, quelles étaient vos inquiétudes ou ce qui faisait en sorte que vous n'étiez pas nécessairement convaincu que d'invoquer la loi sur les mesures d'urgence était la chose à faire au moment où le gouvernement considérait le faire? Should I simplify?
Oui.
Vous avez mentionné que vous pensiez qu'il y avait d'autres outils qu'on aurait pu utiliser avant d'invoquer la loi sur les mesures d'urgence. Qu'est-ce qui fait en sorte que vous étiez de cet avis-là?
Well, une partie de ça, c'est que la province d'Ontario a invoqué leur loi d'urgence. On n'a pas encore revu cet acte. Il y aura des pouvoirs ou des autorités dans ce acte qui peuvent être utilisés, en plus les lois selon le code criminel.
Comment se fait-il que, je comprends que lorsque vous envoyez un courriel au bureau du ministre, c'est comme si vous aviez écrit directement au ministre,
Oui.
mais sachant qu'on discutait quand même de cette loi-là qui est quand même très sérieuse, pourquoi ne pas avoir insisté pour transmettre votre message directement vous-même, en réunion par exemple?
Mais il y a beaucoup de discussions quand il fait la consultation avec le GRC au niveau de ministre, de député. J'avais l'opportunité de donner toutes mes opinions. En plus, si les autorités étaient utiles ou non utiles, s'il y a des défis de renforcer certaines autorités qui étaient mis dans l'acte en question.
We heard from another witness that the protest organizers were receiving leaks from law enforcement, including the RCMP. Is that something that you guys are investigating?
Sorry, leaks from
From law enforcement to the protest
No,
organizers?
we are fully, any accusations such as that, we fully reviewed. If there was, and the person, if there was happened, the person would be held to account, whether they're in the RCMP or not in the RCMP.
But did it happen?
Did it happen? You say you're
No, it didn't
investigating
happen.
and you've concluded your investigation.
So it's over.
you've concluded it
Yes.
didn't happen, or it did and it wasn't a big
No,
deal?
in regards to the specific allegations, in regards to, I think it was it came out of the testimony of Mr. Bulford.
And Mr. Keith Wilson, the lawyer, who said that, Mr. Bulford said that past Mounties might have leaks, but we heard, very clearly from another lawyer that there were leaks from serving members of law enforcement, and he said specifically the RCMP.
There are ongoing reviews being done with that, but to date, there has been no codes of conduct ordered or no charges laid.
And why is it that there is so much of what happened at this pivotal moment that you can't remember?
Well, it was a while back. There was 3 to 4, sometimes 6 meetings a day on this very subject. There was also a lot of things going on besides the convoy. It's easy to, confuse one meeting into another meeting into another meeting.
But
It's
when the
not-
Prime Minister is sitting at the head of the table and when he's not, and you couldn't remember whether you spoke at the meeting where they're discussing the Emergencies Act where the Prime Minister is chairing it.
We had the same meeting 4 times. We would have a meeting at our level, at the deputy minister level, at the minister level, and at the prime minister level, almost the same meeting. So to tell whether I was there virtually or in person, it was difficult to remember that.
Does it hurt your credibility as Commissioner?
Absolutely not.
Because there's been questions about your conduct now at 2 different inquiries. And I'm just wondering...
I don't think there's any question about my conduct at this inquiry. You're questioning my conduct, but I don't think anybody else is.
How
I'm not-
confident? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'd love to. How confident are you that cabinet was aware of your position
Very
reservations?
confident.
Okay.
And just to go back to that question, it's not actually me raising these questions. It's come very clearly from MPs that are wondering why it is that your public comments are different from your private advice.
Well, they can bring that up to me.
But when you're asked about
That
it,
was the safest option, that you couldn't have done what you did without it. But you didn't say it was necessary, though. Is there a reason why you didn't say it was necessary?
It's not up to me to decide if it's necessary or if it meets the threshold. It's about, will it be useful to law enforcement? Is there any gaps or any problems if we were trying to enforce it? That's what the parliamentarians would look at. If it's another agency that's going to do something with a regulation, they should be asking that agency.
But if you look at the EA, if you look at Section 2 of the CSIS Act, it needs to be necessary, it needs to be a threat to national security. So as the head, as a commissioner of the RCMP, did you consider that it was necessary?
I thought it was useful. I thought it was needed. Now, obviously, I have the benefit of hindsight. we wouldn't have been able to do the enforcement actions as safe as we did. We wouldn't have been able to keep the people at that protest as safe as they were, and it wouldn't have been concluded in the short time frame it was if it wasn't for the emergency.
En
act.
français?
just to
En
confirm
français,
that
s'il vous plaît,
you're
en français?
Sans l'acte d'urgence, c'était très difficile de faire le renforcement de qu'est-ce qu'on a fait. Ça donnait un environnement qui était plus sauf pour les Canadiens, pour les protesteurs. On n'était pas capable de compléter le proteste dans le temps qu'on a fait, dans la manière qu'on a fait, qui était plus sauf. C'était les pouvoirs de l'acte qui nous a donné ça.
But just to clarify, you're saying that you concluded that it was useful and needed after the fact. But on February 13th, your advice to the government was that you had the existing authorities to
No.
proceed to end the blockades.
There was the draft of we knew what some of the authorities were going to be. Of course, we were asked if those were such authorities, would they be useful to law enforcement? I said that they would be useful, but I also cautioned that there are other authorities, because if I don't give the full picture, then they can't make a proper decision.
And just to put a finer point on it, you are aware that there are members of parliament and people in the public who question your ability as a commissioner. Can you just clarify today how you view your conduct, your leadership at the RCMP, and whether you are staying on?
I'm absolutely staying on as commissioner of the RCMP.
And how would you
Yes, go ahead.
describe your leadership of the RCMP?
Go ahead.
You said earlier that you guys put everything on the table. In fact, you did. So, what do you say to the fact that you guys didn't put everything on the table, including going out to the streets and talking to the protesters? And what other factor that the RCMP could have done without using the Emergency Act, without resorting to it?
Well, it's important to note that, again, as per my testimony, we were not the police of jurisdiction. It wasn't for us to take the lead on this event. We were there to assist. And so in that event, there were certain people designated under the command of the Ontario Police, Ottawa Police Service, to in fact provide that liaison to the protesters and to have those conversations and engage the protesters, and that was done. It was a little bit more difficult because normally we engage with the lead of the protest group. In this case, there was 6 or 7 leaders, so it made it a bit more problematic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, you didn't know if you needed a court order to seize the bank accounts as freeze asset. Is there a reason why you weren't aware that you needed a court order?
No, the seizing, I knew that you needed a court order. I wasn't sure on the freezing because we've never done the freezing of accounts. Obviously, when we seize accounts, that's a different aspect, but the freezing was pretty new to me, and I haven't looked at it any further. Thanks,
Thank you all very
everyone.
much.
Thank you.